let's get this started. So this will take a while, so I'm gonna try to be as fast as possible with this. We're gonna start with Ken. Okay, where does Ken fit? I have like two things that are important, and I really like the way I do this when I do matchup charts, by the way, and I think it's really important. You need to have a consistency axis, because otherwise, like, you cannot handle. Two matchups might be identical, but one matchup might have a lot of inconsistency. And the more inconsistent a character is, the worse the character technically is when it comes to like tournament performance, for example. Characters that are highly in this area are usually problematic for tournament use because they don't give you the experience that you really want, and that is consistency, right? Okay, so Ken. Ken is a highly consistent character that Ryu... Now this is a difficult one. Does Ryu beat Ken? I'm not quite sure about that. I think V-Trigger 2 Ken does fine against Ryu. I think V-Trigger 1 Ken might actually have a slight disadvantage against Ryu. So overall, we're always going to assume the proper matchup knowledge from players, okay? And I think Ryu versus Ken is a good example of a 5-5 when both played properly. So I'm gonna put it right in the middle, and so this is a good baseline for a consistent matchup that is even. Actually, let's put it slightly in Ryu's favor. Okay, slightly, but really not much. I don't think a lot. Slightly in Ryu's favor. Okay, so let's put it here and see where we can go from there. Okay, so Chun-Li. Chun-Li is also an interesting character, a consistent matchup. Maybe not as consistent as Ken. No, actually as consistent as Ken. As consistent as Ken. And where does she fit? This is also like a 5-5. Ken and Chun-Li are actually really similar, I think, when it comes to the difficulty and how Ryu plays against these, okay? If anything, Ken is a little bit less consistent than Ryu, than Chun. So let's put it this way, something like that. Or but I think Chun-Li is actually slightly more difficult than Ken. So something like that seems fine. Thank you so much for the support, Perseus Guile. Very much appreciated. Okay, Zangief. Now, where does Zangief fit? Now, Zangief is a really interesting character because a lot of people assume that Ryu trashes Zangief. I do not think that's the case at all. I think since Season 4, Zangief actually wins the matchup against Ryu. And it's a matchup that I dislike because it's very difficult to prevent Zangief from building the the V-Trigger gauge. Since Season 4, this has been true. In Season 2 and 3, Ryu actually beat Zangief, but nowadays not so much anymore. So this is a matchup that Zangief slightly wins against Ryu, but not by much. It's very close, actually. And you can see me trash on Zangief's all the time, right? When it comes to the consistency, pretty up there. It's not as much as the others, but I'd say maybe something like this. Let's keep him around here, okay? Now, Dhalsim. Dhalsim is one of the worst matchups for Ryu in Season 5. Potentially the worst matchup. So where do I put Dhalsim? Because I don't think any character will be below Dhalsim when it comes to the y-axis, right? So where do we put him? Because I'm not quite sure how far I want to put them away. And what about consistency? The Dhalsim matchup, by definition, is really difficult to be consistent with, because every match will be dependent. Are you going to get that one jump in, right? That's going to be a thing. And you're taking risks all the time. So it's a pretty inconsistent match. It's not like top inconsistency. It's a bad matchup that is also inconsistent. I think I'm gonna put him around here and see where we can go with this. Okay, Cammy. Cammy is a matchup that is really... Cammy is pretty even with Ryu. And but because of the dive kick, there is some inconsistency. The dive kick introduces inconsistency by like, I have to make a guess every time there is a jump. There is a guessing situation that makes it inconsistent. So it's an inconsistent matchup that that is pretty even. So let's put Cammy right here. How about Nash? Nash is one of those characters that I have almost no experience in, right? So Nash is one of those that I'm not at all sure how to handle. Ryu does fine against Nash, and potentially this is even a good matchup, and it's also a consistent matchup. Actually, let's put Nash here. Let's put Nash here. This feels right. It's a better matchup than both Chun-Li and Ken, probably. Ryu does bad against Nash? I disagree. Why would he do poorly against Nash? No. This is pretty consistent. Nash does not have a lot of inconsistent tools to add inconsistency. Nash can keep Ryu out? No. Feel pretty good about putting Nash right there. Now, there's the queen of inconsistency, Armika. Armika is a pretty annoying character to play against, but at the same time, it's not a particularly difficult one to play against. So I'd say Armika probably around here, maybe a little bit, actually I'm not quite sure about that. Now Karin is interesting because she's a consistent, annoying character. People think Karin is bad for Ryu, but for the most part, I don't agree with that. I think Karin is annoying for anyone really. You can't play the fireball game with Ryu against Karin, and you can force her to do bad things. So I don't actually think this is a particularly bad matchup for Ryu. But it's also not that great, right? Let's say like it's slightly in Karin's favor. That's probably true, but it is pretty consistent. But Ryu has the tools to deal with her. I don't think this is a particularly bad matchup. So I'd put her somewhere, something like this, I think sounds reasonable. No. Karin is not that bad. I think people overestimate or have a poor understanding of the matchup. Now here's the thing. Birdie, because of the toolset of Birdie, he's more towards the inconsistent axis right there. I mean obviously he's always on somewhere on the axis, right? But he's more towards inconsistent gameplay. But at the same time, I think Ryu beats Birdie now. I do think that Ryu beats Birdie. So let's put Birdie somewhere here. But like Birdie can do YOLO stuff to win still. Rashid is a character that got nerfed significantly, and yet he's still pretty good. At the same time, I'm not comfortable putting him towards like consistency. Like he's not a very consistent, but not also a very inconsistent character. And Ryu does okay against him. I wouldn't say Ryu does poorly against Rashid. I don't think so. So, how about we put him... I mean, Rashid has some inconsistent tools, let's be clear about that. How about we put him something like this? Mika's neutral is not dominant, it's just full of YOLO. Laura. Now, here's potentially like one of the best matchups for Ryu. One of the best matchups for Ryu, but at the same time, it's a very inconsistent matchup as well. This is a character that a lot of people hate, and I don't like playing against Laura, but at the same time, there's only one character that Ryu beats more than Laura. So this is a matchup this is, out of all of these characters so far, by far the best matchup for Ryu. But also the character that is pretty inconsistent. So let's put Laura somewhere there. Necalli, a very consistent character that is annoying though. Kind of annoying. You cannot avoid the V-trigger activation as Ryu, but at the same time, Necalli has to take some gambles. So whenever I play against Afro Saiyan, I feel like Necalli... I feel like there are some key moments where Necalli has to gamble in order to take the win, right? This adds inconsistency, but at the same time, like Necalli does Necalli Ryu should be a pretty much a 5-5, but it tends towards the inconsistent. How can I put Necalli? Necalli fits around there where Cammy is and where Rashid is, I feel. It's just that you can't see him if I put him right there. How about... How about we put him something like this? How about that? Okay. Vega. Vega is a character that I'm very undecided on. Because whenever I play a weak Vega player, I feel like Ryu just dominates the matchup and there's nothing Vega can do. So I think it's a good matchup, but at the same time, when I play someone like Bolt Strike, I can't get away with any fireballs. So I feel like this is just dependent on how strong my opponent is. If the opponent knows how to handle the fireball game, I do feel like Vega can actually turn it around. So it's kind of hard to say for me. Is Bolt Strike just such a good player that I'm struggling against him, and he's getting away with fireball punishes because my fireball game is bad, or is it that strong Vega players can overwhelm Ryu if they stand properly? It's hard for me to tell which one it is. It might be both in some way. So there's that. Is this a good matchup? For the most part, I feel like this is a good matchup for Ryu, but whenever I play against a strong Vega player, man, does it feel difficult. And by the way, it's a pretty consistent matchup as well. There's not a lot of inconsistent... I mean, Sky High Claw kind of added a little bit of inconsistency, but for the most part, this is a good matchup for Ryu. It used to be one of Ryu's best matchups. So is it better than Ken? Is it better than Nash? Probably not. Maybe? Maybe it is. Let me put Vega right there. I think it's a consistent match. Yeah, around there seems right. Strong Vegas are tough, but I don't know which one it is. Is it me being bad or is it them being really good? So against Bolt Strike, I feel like I have massive issues against him. Bison. And Bison is an interesting character that I have not played in a while. It seems his toolset, like this used to be one of the worst matchups for Ryu, but I don't feel that way anymore. Maybe it's slightly a bad matchup, but not that much. But I do feel like it's a little bit on the inconsistent end. Maybe something like this. Yeah, this actually feels right. It's inconsistent because you're always standing at a range where down forward fears can absolutely annihilate you, so you never feel comfortable doing anything against M. Bison. It's not that bad. It's not like on Laura level of inconsistency. People think, nah, it's not that bad. It used to be really bad, but it's not that bad. It's a bad matchup though. It's a bad matchup. Let's be clear about that. M. Bison beats Ryu. Not by much. F.A.N.G. Now this is a matchup that I'm also a bit undecided on, especially in Season 5. I'm not sure about it. I've not played a lot of F.A.N.G players in Season 5. This used to be a bad matchup for Ryu, and it's probably still a bad matchup, but not that bad anymore. It's a matchup that is more towards the consistency part. It's hard to say. And I actually, it's kind of hard to say whether F.A.N.G is really bad or... Like, is it a bad matchup or is it a good matchup for Ryu? It's hard to say. Let's put F.A.N.G right there. I think this is fair for now. I might change this later on. Let's take a look at Alex. Alex is a character that is mostly absolutely inconsistent, okay? So Alex is one of the kings of inconsistencies, but at the same time, Ryu does fine against him. But I don't think this goes either way. I think it's just an inconsistent matchup that is 5-5. So how about we put him right there? Guile? Now, what about Guile? I think Ryu beats Guile. And you can do it pretty consistently, to be honest. I don't think that Guile is a problem anymore. Ryu beats Alex. People, like, Alex players always say Ryu beats Alex, and Ryu players always say the opposite. This is something I hear all the time. I think it's a 5-5. It's an inconsistent 5-5, and because of the inconsistency, Alex players don't like the matchup, and Ryu players don't like it either. Why was Guile a problem? Guile was way better at controlling the space. Nowadays, Guile has to take more risks in order to control the space. Previously, you needed to be just super lucky with the jump-ins. Nowadays, you don't need to do that anymore. Ryu has better fireballs. Ryu has better comeback potential with V-Trigger 1. That helps in the matchup a lot, by the way. So Guile does have to take some risks from time to time in order to stay in the match. The moment I pop V-Trigger, it's actually not that easy for Guile. So the matchup is different nowadays. Jimmy, honestly, I just think you're good at the Guile matchup. I'm not quite sure. I mean, I play pretty strong Guile players from time to time. We just had a set against Akainu today, and I beat him, right? And Akainu is a competitor that makes top 8 at CPT events. So I'm pretty confident in the matchup, but at the same time, if I'm confident in the matchup, then I also know about the matchup and I know how to play it. So if I know how to play it, and I say it's a good matchup, it's not like a really good matchup. It's not like Ryu destroys Guile. That's nonsense, obviously. But it's not a bad one either. So let's put Guile right there. It's mostly a 5-5. It's mostly a 5-5. Let's be clear about that. I mean, the middle line is the 5-5 line, and as you can see, I think Ryu has a lot of matchups that are really even. And this is really important, because I do feel like Ryu can beat most characters just fine. Okay, Ibuki. I hate Ibuki because I don't feel consistent against her. What's the problem with the Ibuki? Ibuki is problematic because she's a inconsistent character that... Because like every jump in is a gamble because of her EX kunai. On the ground you can't properly play a fireball game against her. I don't like it as a result, but she did get nerfed quite a bit as well. So I don't know, let's put her right there. I think is she more inconsistent than our Mika? Probably not. Honestly, let's put our Mika a little bit more to the side. I think Alex fits more like this. Yeah, I think this is pretty good actually. And Bison is more of a difficult matchup than Ibuki is, but Ibuki is more inconsistent. Yeah, that lines up pretty well. So let's put her there. Balrog. Not sure if Pres Vegeta is watching. Balrog is an interesting character. I feel like if I'm playing against a strong Balrog, inconsistent, absolutely. Balrog is like actually used to be the champ of inconsistency because of his complete nonsensical options in V-Trigger mode. Nowadays, it's a little bit different. Low-level Balrog is very easy to beat, but high-level Balrog that actually know what they're doing, it's not that easy. Bad matchup. No, I don't think so. Maybe a little bit. It's mostly inconsistent. It's similar to Ibuki in a certain way. How do I feel about Ibuki? Who's more inconsistent, Balrog or Ibuki? I think Balrog is a worse matchup than... I think I need to put Bison a little bit further down. And I think Balrog needs to be somewhere here like in the middle. Something like that. Rog is not a bad matchup for Ryu. It's hard to say, to be honest. Maybe something like that. It's definitely not a really bad matchup. If anything, it's slightly... I think it might be slightly in Balrog's favor, but not by much. Yeah, I feel good about this placement right there. We might change it later on. Okay, how about Juri? I have not a lot of experience against Juri in Season 5. What about Jimmy versus Ryu? Okay, what about this one? This one is kind of rough to judge. I have not a lot of experience against Juri in Season 5, right? I think for the most part this is a 5-5. I do think it's somewhat inconsistent. I think the matches are usually decided by interactions that are not very easily predictable in the neutral game. The V-trigger of Juri is really difficult to handle as well. I don't like the matchup a lot, but I don't think like Juri... I don't think Juri beats Ryu, but I do think it's like some... hard to say. Maybe something like that. Here, we'll put her right there. We should have like different categories, right? So we have more space to decide. Yeah, this does not sound too bad. So let's give us a little bit more space to work with, so I don't have to put a lot of characters right next to each other. This seems about right. Urien. What about Urien? Urien is one of the characters that I hate to play because you can't anti-air him consistently when he does certain things. This is one of the main problems that I have against a lot of characters. The fact that they have moves where you have to make a decision whether you want to anti-air or not. Do you think Urien matchup is in Ryu's favor? That's nonsense. You cannot parry the knee drop consistently. That's the problem. You can parry the knee drop if you know what's happening. If you have a bad read, you're gonna die from it. Bad knee drop, you parry, he gets a hard punch crush counter. Great. You cannot parry EX tackle now. This is a bad matchup for Ryu, absolutely. This is definitely a bad matchup, there's no question about that. But for the most part, I think the inconsistency part is what bothers me even more. So I'm actually gonna put Urien right there. If you could parry everything on reaction, that would be awesome. Okay, this is a 5-5, by the way. Akuma Ryu is a 5-5 in Season 5, and there's actually quite a lot of consistency as well, because the inconsistency that, like, Akuma had with the inconsistency that Akuma used to have is pretty much gone. I mean, it's not super consistent, but it's much better than it used to be. I have to put Zangief a little bit further down, I feel, just to make room for... Yeah, I think Akuma fits right there. It's pretty consistent. It's not the most consistent, but it used to be very inconsistent, so that's a big step up. Kolin. Kolin. I can't go through every matchup like super detailed. The problem is if I do that, we're gonna be here for a couple of hours, right? And I want to avoid that. It's already a really, really long... It's already pretty long, to be honest. Something to consider. So yeah, Kolin, where does Kolin fit? She's very inconsistent. Because there's no way to avoid the V-trigger activation from happening, and once she pops V-trigger, you can die in a very similar way that you die against G. So she's very inconsistent. Probably out of all the characters, the most inconsistent. At the same time, it's not that bad of a matchup, right? So let me put... I want to say it's a 5-5. Maybe something like this. She's the most inconsistent. Yeah, something like that. Something like that. What about Ed? Ed is a difficult one. You don't see Ed a whole lot, right? And I do think that he's also one of the kings of inconsistencies, but he's definitely a better matchup than Kolin, for example. Let's put him right there for now. Abigail. Ryu beats Abigail. There's no doubt about that. And he can actually add a lot of consistency. Normally, Abigail is a very inconsistent character, but Ryu can actually parry his unblockables and stuff like that on reaction, so that's not a problem for Ryu. So he's actually surprisingly consistent. He's surprisingly consistent, but he can still rob you, though. Like, keep that in mind. He can still rob you, but yeah, probably around here. I think Abigail is around here. Menat. Menat. So here's an opinion that people heavily disagree with. I think Ryu beats Menat. And I think the matchup is... The matchup can go the wrong way very easily. But at the same time, the matchup is not bad. I think Guile is pretty consistent, actually. Yeah, British Bulwark. This is one that is probably very debatable. It used to be one of the inconsistent matchups. I used to rate Guile as inconsistent, but I think nowadays a lot has changed. Enough has changed for me to think that you can play the matchup in a consistent fashion. Okay, so Menat. I think Ryu beats Menat. But at the same time, because of the nature of how she plays, it's not like the most consistent matchup, right? So I think I'm gonna put Menat somewhere around here. It's not very inconsistent, but it isn't super consistent as well. Like a few key moments will decide the matchup, so you have to pay attention all the time. Okay, you have to pay attention all the time. So let's put Menat right there. Zeku. Now Zeku is a character that can really mess with Ryu. Like, you can't play the fireball game very efficiently against Zeku, and you cannot, like, young Zeku can invalidate a fireball game from really far away with his stupid heart punch. The heart punch is gonna interrupt the fireball from ridiculous ranges, which I really don't like. So you have to stand really far away, and far away, like, you actually risk getting shouldered against young Zeku. Against old Zeku, it's kind of interesting because old Zeku can hang in the fireball game against Ryu. And on top of that, his flip move is not something that you can deal with in consistent fashion. It's something actually that I really dislike about the Zeku matchup. I think in general, Ryu does okay against Zeku. It's a 5-5, but at the same time, it's a matchup that I personally dislike because of some of the inconsistencies. I kind of want to put him next to the other characters right here, like where Necalli is, for example. I think Zeku fits very well into, like, close to Necalli and Rashid. There's not enough space here. Let's push some characters a little bit further down to make some space for Zeku. I think Zeku deserves his own spot right there, somewhere around here, in the 5-5 area. So Zeku, let's put Zeku right there. Let me try to fix this up. Zeku is inconsistent for sure. Maybe a little bit of a bad matchup, something like that. There we go. Yeah, a little bit, but not too much. Ryu can play against Zeku. No, it's not that easy. It's not that easy, really. Zeku has to take a lot of this is why I put the inconsistency tab, right? Inconsistency goes both ways. If something is inconsistent, it means that if you're just having a wrong read, you're gonna die here. Zeku players I don't feel like Zeku wins the matchup very easily. How many months is Lionel? He's a little bit over 8 months now. Yeah, Ryu actually beats Birdie in this season. What is the x-axis? You don't see it anymore, but it's consistency. It's the consistency axis. On the left side is inconsistency, and on the right side is consistency. So the further to the left, the more inconsistent something is. Anyways, let's keep it like this for now. Maybe I'm gonna shuffle it around a little bit more. Ryu beats Birdie. I think so. I think Ryu actually beats Birdie now. But it's inconsistent, right? It's very far to the left. Okay, Sakura. What about this matchup? Can Ryu handle flips? No, he cannot. This is why inconsistency is a problem. Zeku flips are problematic for Ryu. You have to do like jump back jab or something like that. Ryu definitely wins versus Sakura. So Ryu beats Sakura in the fireball game, and this has always been the case, right? It's kind of difficult to call though, because Sakura has also been buffed the last couple of seasons, right? I feel like whenever I'm playing in Sakura, Ryu beats Sakura, but not by a whole lot. It's a good matchup though. It's a good matchup that is pretty consistent. It's a good matchup that is pretty consistent. Needs to be higher. Yeah, actually, let's put Sakura right there. No, I don't think Sakura beats Ryu. Sakura actually has a hard time with the Ryu's fireballs, and in V-Trigger mode, she has an even harder time against the fireballs. 0 chance Ryu beats Birdie this season. Maybe I'm wrong about that, honestly. I'm gonna leave this up to, like, it's debatable for sure. I think it's inconsistent, and inconsistency is always bad when you're talking about matchups. So Birdie can take some crazy gambles and can take wins off of that, right? Yeah, Ryu beats Sakura. This is why I put her there. You will be getting this on YouTube, by the way. Okay. Blanka. Blanka's V-Trigger itself is very inconsistent, but the rest of the matchup is actually pretty consistent. So it's only the V-Trigger portion that is surprisingly difficult to deal with, especially V-Trigger 2 is the inconsistent one, right? And a really powerful one as well. So it's Blanka definitely resides on the inconsistent portion, but Ryu beats Blanka. Ryu clearly beats Blanka, by the way. So it's pretty high up there, but it's also somewhat inconsistent. Let's put Blanka right there. Yeah, let's put Blanka right there. How about this? How about that? Something like that. Okay, Falke. Falke is a character that I'm not sure about at all. I have quite a lot of experience against this character because of the Forfils. Forfils is one of the very, very few high-level Falke players, right? And I'm experimenting against him all the time. At first I thought Falke annihilates Ryu. Then I figured out some interesting strategies to counter play against Falke. A surprising discovery to me was the fact that Ryu can actually zone Falke. I thought it was not possible, but it is. But zoning Falke leads to more inconsistency, because then you're opening yourself up to Falke jump-ins. I always struggle to pronounce Falke's name because I'm not sure how to do it properly. She's German, and I'm German, and the proper way of saying it would be Falke. Falke is the proper German pronunciation. That's why I don't want to say Falk or Falk or Falk you, whatever. That's why I like to say Falke, because it's closer to the German pronunciation, but at the same time, it's still an English pronunciation. German way sounds good. Falke in German just means falcon. So yeah, Falke, where do we put her? I think she's an inconsistent character. She's definitely inconsistent because you want to play the fireball game, but you're opening yourself up to weird jump-in gambles against her. She's a character that can alter her jump arc anyways, which automatically puts her on the left side of this this graph because, well, altering the jump arc makes it difficult to anti-air. But is she a bad matchup for Ryu? Probably not. I don't think so. She's somewhat inconsistent though. So how about we put Zeku a little bit further down and Falke... Actually, Falke is more inconsistent than Zeku. She's on a similar level than Alex, I feel. Maybe a little bit of a worse matchup. Well, maybe something like that. That seems fitting. But Ibuki's not like that bad. I think that we need to switch places right there. Falke is pretty inconsistent. Something like that, maybe. 6-4 Falke. This isn't a 6-4. I don't think it's... Like, 6-4 is already pretty bad. I think it's 5-5, if anything. But I'm still undecided on this. I think Falke is a big question mark that a lot of people have not... Like, how often do you see Ryu versus Falke? Hard to say. At first I thought she heavily beats Ryu. Then I actually thought Ryu can beat Falke if you play the fireball game. And then I realized there's a lot more inconsistency that you have to deal with. So who knows? Does Ryu actually have a pretty... it's pretty much 5-5 against Forfils when I play him. Whenever we play, it's very close. It's one of the reasons why I don't feel particularly... that Falke beats Ryu heavily. If Falke beats Ryu heavily, and I don't have a lot of matchup experience, Forfils would be completely annihilating me, which is not the case. Well, Harp, the reason why, like, Ryu in Season 5 is mostly fine. And I think this is a good reflection of that. If you like, the story of Ryu is most of the characters are actually pretty even in Season 5. There are a few outliers that you really have to be thinking about, like Dhalsim, for example. That is highly problematic, but Dhalsim is not a character that you see often at tournaments. Urien might actually be a bigger problem when it comes to that, but at the same time, Ryu does not have that much issues against Urien than he does against Dhalsim. It's kind of hard to say. Urien is definitely, though, somewhat inconsistent, and I don't like it as a result. Let's talk about Cody. Where does Cody fit in? What do you do against Cody? You zone him with fireballs, right? I think this matchup is decided more on the V-skill of that Cody chooses. I struggle a lot against V-skill 2 Codys. What is the left side? Left-right is consistency axis. The more to the left, the less consistent the matchup is. Something like that. So yeah. Where does Cody fit in? Cody's V-skill is kind of dependent. The Cody matchup is very consistent until he has V-Trigger. The V-Trigger activation of him, like V-Trigger 2, is not particularly... It's kind of annoying. Because I feel like you have to wait it out for the most part. You think Cody beats Ryu? Yeah, V-Skill 2 is actually difficult to deal with, but I didn't have to deal with Cody a whole lot, to be honest. I think in general, this is one of the more consistent matchups. I think it's more of the consistent matchups and maybe slightly in Cody's favor. If the Cody player chooses V-Skill 2 and uses it properly, it's really difficult. But it's hard to say. I have a hard time understanding whether I should be... This is in Ryu's favor or in Cody's favor, to be honest. I think it used to be in Ryu's favor. And honestly, you would think that it's even more in Ryu's favor now that he got fireball buffs, because Cody does struggle against the fireballs. But he did get a pretty good anti-fireball tool with the V-skill, the V-skill 2. Is Urien that bad of a matchup for Ryu? I want to move him around a little bit more. I'm not quite sure about it, to be honest. I don't think Ryu wins the neutral game very easily. The neutral game is highly inconsistent because of Urien options. And it's not like he has crazy, like, super poor options. If he chooses V-Skill 2, Urien can invalidate the fireball game of Ryu and can even get essentially like pressure every single time he throws a fireball. So that's a problem. And if he chooses the armor and he's waiting a proper moment, he can actually use the tackle or the headbutt thing to go through a fireball and get pressure off of that. It's not that easy to deal with. And in the neutral game, he can choose a lot of inconsistent options that can make me lose the game. So yeah, I don't like the matchup. I never understood how Problem X thinks it's an even matchup. I'm honestly a little bit undecided on Bison. The only reason why I put Bison really low down there is because I lack experience, to be honest. There is a chance it might be more even now. It is inconsistent though. It's definitely inconsistent. But still, maybe Bison needs to be a little bit higher. No, I'm not quite sure about it. If Bison needs to be higher, I think Urien needs to be higher as well. It's hard to say. Let's take a look at it if we get the full picture. Okay, there are only a handful of characters left, so let's talk about some matchups and like compare them, because sometimes you can see clear mistakes in matchup charts by just comparing one character and the other, right? Then you can see, oh yeah, you misjudged a character. That can happen. Let's put in the other characters first, and then we'll see, right? Okay, so Sagat. Sagat Ryu, I think is a 5-5. I think this one is pretty even, and it's pretty consistent. So how about we put him there? You think Ryu wins just because of parry? Nah. It's not that easy, actually. Maybe he wins this slightly, but really not by a whole lot. There's no way he beats... Like, play Ryan hard when he plays, Sagat. He actually made it so difficult for me. But that was Season 4. Ryu got a fireball buff, and Sagat actually Sagat got buffed quite a lot. So both Ryu and Sagat got buffed in Season 5. So So yeah, probably not a whole lot has changed. It's probably 5-5 though. If anything, it might be slightly in Ryu's favor, but not a whole lot. But yeah, I'm gonna leave Sagat there. It feels good putting him right there. Seems reasonable. Gee. Okay. When it comes to inconsistency, he's like there. This is where we're gonna put him. For real though, like I need to put him like somewhere on this chart still, right? I think I need to move everything a little bit to the right. I think I actually literally have to move everything to the right. Let's do that, honestly. Can you do that somehow? Is there any way we can do this? Okay, so G is inconsistent. G is the most inconsistent character. That's absolutely true. That's definitely true. So there's no doubt about that. But is it a bad matchup? Now, I don't think G is a particularly bad matchup, but the fact that he's like so inconsistent is kind of annoying. It's definitely somewhere down there. I think G, this is where G fits. I think something like that. You can't zone G because of his V skill. It invalidates fireballs. But like G does have some issues in the neutral game. It's not like G dominates Ryu in the neutral game. The problem with the matchup really is you can't avoid the V-trigger activation. It is going to happen. And it will be 100% deciding the match. This is why he's the most inconsistent character. If there was like a good way to prevent G from popping V-trigger, it might actually be a good matchup and way more to the right, but the way it is right now, no. Yeah, G has advantage over Ryu. This is the Ryu matchup chart. This is the advantage chart. So Ryu has an advantage over these characters that are further to the top. And the more you go to the bottom, the less of an advantage Ryu has. So this is a bad matchup by that definition. It's an inconsistent bad matchup. So how am I doing the chart wrong? I don't think Ryu wins the neutral. How does Ryu win the neutral game? I think the neutral game itself is pretty inconsistent because you can't throw fireballs, and he can actually fish for crush counters at a certain range. It's not that easy to do. His double heavy kick thing, I don't even know what that move is really annoying as well. You can't deal with it properly, and so you could argue otherwise that Ryu has a good way to do play fireballs, the fireball game otherwise, but that's not true. Look at it from the character's perspective, how they do versus Ryu. As long as Ryu stays at mid-screen range, G struggles to deal with the fireball game. It's not true, as I said. His heavy attacks are really annoying to deal with as for Ryu. He does okay. Like, I'm not saying like G does very poorly, or no, that Ryu does poorly against G. It's somewhat even in the neutral game. But that's the problem. Ryu doesn't have a proper advantage, even when G does not have any level ups. So the presidentiality level, even if he isn't level up, Ryu doesn't dominate the matchup. And once he has V-trigger, G can go for auto win combos or auto win situations, and that's a problem. That's a big problem. You cannot zone because of the V skill as well. So that's something we've established. So you have to go in all the time. Going in all the time can work, but at the same time, you will run into a light kick buffer from time to time. He'll level up and he'll even get an advantage off of that. So I would not at all argue that Ryu wins the neutral game. He does not. The left to right bar is the inconsistency axis. The more to the left, the less consistent it is. Okay, Kage. So Ryu beats Kage in the neutral game, but Kage has some interesting options once he gets in. He can also add inconsistency because of his changes in the jump arc, right? There's a sweet spot where G normals don't reach Ryu and Ryu can fireball him to death. Yeah, but that sweet spot that you're talking about is where the wheel kick is the most effective and not punishable by Ryu as well. So there's that honesty. So what about G? Kage. It's definitely somewhere in the inconsistent area. Does Ryu beat Kage? It's a bit more consistent. Maybe something like that. Maybe something like that. I feel like putting Menat a little bit further to the left, to be honest. Yeah, this seems good. Kage got buffed quite a bit, so it's something to consider. He can add inconsistency, and on top of that, he's not completely helpless in the neutral game. Okay, so, Lucia. Where do we put Lucia? Lucia is an interesting character. Lucia is a character that I think at first seemed inconsistent, but the more I play against Lucia, the more I feel like Ryu actually controls the gameplay somewhat well. So I think this is a good matchup. Maybe something like that. No, Lucia cannot easily deal with Ryu. I don't think Lucia beats Ryu. Okay. Now, actually, Lucia has issues against the fireball because, like, Lucia can't actually keep up with Ryu's fireballs if you're standing at the correct range. It adds a lot of inconsistency to her game plan, so I don't think she can deal with the fireballs properly. Only from really far away, but then you're not standing at the right range. Honda. What do you think about Honda, guys? So Honda is by far the best matchup for Ryu. I think Honda is something like this. It's also really consistent. Actually, like, consistency-wise, it's hard to say. Because you have to play the fireball game, that itself adds inconsistency. But it's the best matchup for Ryu. Let's put it something like that. This is the right place for Honda, I think. The butt slam, actually, it's kind of difficult. If you're playing against a really competent Honda and the Honda player knows the spacing, EX butt slam cannot be parried. And that actually creates issues for me sometimes, because you'll get hit. You'll get hit by Honda if the Honda player is really good at that. But yeah, in general, this is the best matchup for Ryu. There's no doubt about that. Here's another one that is actually bad for Ryu. So Poison beats Ryu. The question is how much and how consistent. It's actually a consistently bad matchup, which is bad. I think F.A.N.G is a little bit further up there. It's less consistent. Yeah, something like that. Where does Poison belong? I think it feels very similar to Juri, just more consistent. And the more consistent a bad matchup is, the worse it is. So something like that. Smart Hondas are not going to use butt slam. Yeah, you're right. Can you explain why Ryu loses to Poison? Yeah, Poison wins the mid-screen game because of her long-range normals that you cannot whiff punch, by the way. So what you're doing in the matchup is you're trying to get in all the time. The V-Skill 2, the wheel kick thing, makes it so that she gets a side switch every time you jump. And you kind of need to jump if you want to get the damage done. So every time you jump, not only are you guessing, like, not only are you adding, like, you're making it so that if you don't get the jump in, not only do you get anti-aired, you also get the side switch if you're close to the corner. So you can't afford to jump in against Poison because every jump in might actually cost you the game. Every single one, because if you spend all of your life cornering Poison and then she gets the side switch because you decide to get a jump in, then you're done. You're not going to get the match. Poison can really keep Ryu away very effectively now, which means you need to be very aggressive in the matchup. That's the only way you can win. But at the same time, being very aggressive can actually lead to you losing, right? So it's a pretty hard matchup, and it's consistently hard. There's not a lot of... there's actually not that much risk involved for Poison. For the most part, every time Ryu takes a risk, that's in Poison's favor. The trade, fireball trades with the whip are gonna be bad in the long run. Especially because it's more likely you're gonna get hit out of a fireball. Like, the fireball itself was gonna be problematic. Can V-Trigger 2 help with the matchup? I have not considered that, to be honest. Maybe. Maybe it's something I should be exploring. Not a bad suggestion. But probably not. Honestly, probably not. V-Skill 2? I doubt it. I doubt it. I should be trying it, though. Let's be real. It's something I should be trying. Anyways, Guile. What about Guile? I think Ryu does okay against Guile. I don't think does Ryu beat Guile? Let me think about this. Guile is a character that is kind of annoying to deal with. Ryu beats Guile? I don't think Ryu beats Guile. It's hard to say. I mean, obviously I don't have a lot of experience against Guile. Any jump in can result in you dying, so jumping against Guile is dangerous. His fireball game is actually surprisingly dangerous for Ryu. Honda robbery is almost on G level. I don't think so. I think the robbery, you can avoid the robbery in most instances. Why would you think that robbery Honda is a thing? The V-Trigger 2 is reactable, so it's not a guess. You can actually react to the V-Trigger 2 command grab on block on reaction. So that's useless. And the V-Trigger 1, the V-Trigger 1 headbutt is also reactable by parry. So you can annihilate both V-Triggers. There's no, yeah, like Honda can deal a lot of damage once Honda gets in, but honestly, if you think about it, it's usually a mistake that you made. Let's be clear about that. Okay, but Guile is a character that has a surprisingly annoying fireball to deal with. I feel inclined to jump against Guile quite a lot because the cryokinesis is very, very annoying. It's one of the best tools, really. So I thought at first you can just zone Guile very easily, but you really can't. You don't want to give him V-Trigger that much either. He has a great parry. So there's that. Cryosexual. Honda V-Trigger 2 is useless. It's only useful on hit. So the Honda player needs to open you up first, and then V-Trigger 2 is very effective. You're right about that, because you get a guaranteed way to, you have corner control after you land V-Trigger 2. That's pretty powerful, but you have to land a hit before that. That's the difficult part. It's not easy at all for Honda to get the hit. It's very difficult. Okay, how about that? How about I put Honda a little bit more to the inconsistency area? How about this? I mean, I have to concede a point. If you're gonna be playing the fireball game with the Ryu, at some point you're gonna get jumped in on, for example, right? And Honda does deal a lot of damage, and you can die. Exactly. I mean, Honda says "fuck you up," right? And Honda is not wrong about that. He's gonna fuck you up if he gets the hit. So there's that. What about Guile, though? But what about Guile? I'm not sure about Guile. Where do I put Guile? Well, let's be clear. I think it's a matchup that isn't like particularly... I think there's a lot of inconsistency in the matchup. Guile has the tools to really be annoying. His dive move is very annoying, actually. But yeah, it's probably a 5-5, right? I don't see Guile dominating over Ryu, and I don't see Ryu dominating Guile. Probably is somewhat inconsistent. It's very similar, I think, to Necalli. I think it fits somewhere here. I do think he fits somewhere here. How about this? Okay, there we go. And we only have one more. The newest character in Street Fighter V, Seth. Now, this is a character that I absolutely despise, because this matchup is pretty inconsistent. Seth is one of the kings, actually, of inconsistency. Seth is really annoying. Seth is really inconsistent. And I think the inconsistency leads to the bad matchup. But I have a hard time. Like, let me try to figure out, where do we put Seth? Honestly? Seth axe kick stuff is so annoying, and I feel like Ryu needs so many guesses in order to win that. Yeah, Ryu, like, Laura is one of the best matchups for Ryu. No question about that. Seth beats Ryu, absolutely. But yeah, the inconsistency actually causes Seth to lose. Here's the thing. If you have a good read against Seth, you can actually kill Seth very easily, right? Seth has no life. So getting a major hit in will cause, well, that's going to be a problem for Seth. But at the same time, the guesses themselves are in Seth's favor, which means it's a good matchup for Seth. Question is, how bad of a matchup is this one? Let's try to compare it to Urien. I think it's better than Urien, but more inconsistent. The matchup against G, what about G though? G is easier than Seth, but more inconsistent. That seems about right. How about this? This seems about right. I'm not sure about Urien, honestly. Urien is very inconsistent, but is he like close to Dhalsim level? Probably not. Honestly, I have to put Urien a little bit higher when it comes to the matchup. But is Bison more difficult than Urien? Actually, it's not that hard to say. No, I think G is not that low. G is very far to the left when it comes to the inconsistency, which adds to the frustration when you play against him. But he's not that low, actually. It's not like a clear bad matchup. It's just that you never feel good playing G. But not because it's a bad matchup, but because of the inconsistency that is added. Okay, is there anything obviously wrong with this chart? Let's try to think about this, okay? Let's compare a couple of characters and see if there's like some weird issue that I created. I honestly have a hard time. I think it's wrong. Honestly, Balrog should be a little bit higher. He's inconsistent, but he's not like that bad of a matchup. He fits in line. If anything, maybe Falke. Like, actually, now that I think about it, I think Balrog should be something like this. He's inconsistent, but not that bad of a matchup. And Falke is probably a worse matchup for Ryu, but not that terrible. Poison has more advantage versus Ryu than Bison. A good point, yeah. So should Poison be lower or Bison should be higher? F.A.N.G should be a little bit further to the left. Zangief is okay where he is. I mean, here's the thing. Actually, yeah. Let's put Poison somewhere between Bison and Dhalsim. Bison is easier to play against than Poison. And I think this is reflected pretty well now. The advantage, disadvantage axis as referring to the character in question or Ryu. I feel like Chun-Li shouldn't be that far to the left, to be honest. Nah, actually, this is the Menat thing is probably the most controversial thing that, the most controversial opinion that I have. I think Ryu beats Menat. I think Karin deserves to be a little bit further to the left, to be honest. I think that's wrong. Okay, is there anything that is obviously wrong? Is there anything else that is like obviously wrong? Inconsistent means that you will lose on average. No, that's not what inconsistency means. Inconsistency means even if you're playing a high level, if you're a high level player, you're gonna have a problem getting the win consistently. Which is why Alex is such a weird character to play, because I think against any character, Alex is by nature inconsistent, and that gives him trouble. Actually, like the more I think about it, the more I feel like Honda is on a similar level as Laura. Honda is very similar to Laura in a certain way. It's a better matchup for sure, and it's more consistent, but not that much. I think in general, Dhalsim is more difficult to beat than G. Dhalsim has better options and more consistent options than G against Ryu. But G has the ability to take a game off of a stupid gamble. That's the definition of inconsistency. Young Zeku beats Ryu? Yeah, I agree. It's young Zeku, like Zeku is an interesting character. He's somewhat inconsistent, but like actually the more I think about it, the more I feel like Zeku should be further to the left. I think Zeku, yeah, he should be further down. How about Necalli gets a better spot right here, right in the middle? If anything, you can argue that Cammy deserves to be a little bit further to the left because of her dive kick shenanigans. It's a little bit more inconsistent, but it's not bad. Okay, I can see how Cammy deserves to be a little bit further to the left. She's definitely okay. So I think we're gonna get a better understanding of this. I think something like that makes more sense. Does Ryu lose to Necalli? Probably not. No, I feel bad putting Necalli right there. I don't think that's the proper... But is he as inconsistent as Alex? Definitely not. Not even close. Maybe we'll put Alex a little bit higher to indicate this. Okay, this seems better. I just moved 4 characters. It's okay, like this section right here barely represents any change, to be honest. But yeah, this is just version 1, as I said. That'll be it. for today. Thank you so much for tuning in to the stream.